My 7-year-old son warned me about my husband. His trembling voice startled me more than any alarm ever could. Mama, Daddy has a girlfriend, and when you go on your trip, he's going to take all your money. Aisha Bellwether was 39 years old, with a warm gaze that concealed a sharp mind. Her life, from the outside, appeared completely under control. Her house in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia, was modern and immaculate, with soft aromas that always felt like home. She worked as a financial consultant for an international firm, a demanding but high-paying job that allowed her to spend significant time with her son, Amari. That night, Aisha had just finished reviewing a report for a critical meeting in Nashville. Her flight was scheduled for Tuesday morning. She was packing formal wear in her walk-in closet while Amari, her 7-year-old, played with a jigsaw puzzle on the rug. He was a sweet, sensitive boy whose intelligence often astonished even his teachers. Aisha folded a crisp white blouse and called out to Amari from the closet, "Remember you're staying with your dad on Tuesday?" "Yeah, just for 2 nights." Amari didn't answer. He simply fitted a puzzle piece into place in silence. Aisha noticed his strange quietness, but figured he was just concentrating. After all, sometimes kids didn't like their moms to leave. Later that night, already in his pajamas, Amari asked her to stay with him a little longer before sleep. He lay down next to her, resting his head on her chest, and remained quiet for several minutes until he said something that sliced the night in two. "Mama," he whispered without looking up, "Daddy has a girlfriend." Aisha froze. She thought she hadn't heard him correctly. "What did you say, sweetie?" "That Daddy has a girlfriend. He spoke to her on the phone last night when he thought I was asleep. He was in the den. He told her that when you leave on your trip, they're going to the bank and they're going to do something with the money." Aisha felt a cold dread wash down her back. She swallowed hard. "What exactly did you hear, Amari?" "She told that lady that you'd be away, and they had 3 days to get everything done. She laughed and said they'd finally be able to breathe easy." Aisha hugged her son without saying a word. She could hear her heart hammering in her chest, an urgent warning. Amari fell asleep quickly, but Aisha didn't close her eyes that night. At 3 a.m, she got up and went downstairs to the kitchen to make coffee. She turned on the soft light in the dining room and opened her laptop. She searched through her emails for a file she'd received a couple of weeks earlier. It was a scan of some documents Malik had asked her to sign right after her gallbladder surgery. He had said they were just to update their insurance policies. She found it. 5 pages, small print, confusing legal terms, but one heading immediately caught her attention. General power of attorney with broad authority. Her stomach clenched. Click. She opened another document. Authorization for administration of assets and property in the event of medical contingency. Her hands trembled. She remembered the afternoon she signed those papers. She still had the stitches from the operation. Malik had been loving, attentive. He served her tea, brought the papers over, and said, "It's just a formality, just in case. I want to be able to help you if anything ever happens." Now those words carried a terrifying double meaning. Aisha closed the laptop. She paced the kitchen floor like a prisoner searching for a way out. Her husband, the man who swore eternal love, was plotting against her with another woman, and her son had been the accidental witness. At 4:30 a.m, she checked her suitcase. Everything was packed. But now the idea of leaving the city filled her with panic. Instead of sleeping, she opened her work notepad and began writing a list of questions. How long have they been together? Who is she? Why does he want to take my money? How serious is what I signed? Am I in legal danger? At dawn, Malik woke up as if nothing were wrong. He kissed Aisha on the forehead and brewed coffee. "Did you pack everything?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, observing his every gesture, every word, as if he were a stranger. "What time are you leaving Tuesday? My flight is at 6:10 a.m. I have to leave the house at 4:30. Malik nodded. Then, without a hint of subtlety, he asked, "Are you coming back Thursday or Friday?" Aisha felt a sharp pang in her chest. She took a deep breath and said, "Make it Friday evening. Perfect. And he smiled. That smile was the confirmation. While Amari ate breakfast, Aisha watched him with a mix of tenderness and rage, not against him, but against herself. She had ignored the signs, small absences, ridiculous excuses. Malik had spent more time in meetings, started taking calls on the patio, and changed his cell phone passwords, but she never imagined anything this low. In the afternoon, while Malik was at the grocery store, she called Zora Mathis, a former university colleague who is now an attorney. She requested an urgent meeting. At 7 o'clock sharp, Aisha entered Zora's office in a discreet downtown building. "Do you have the documents you signed?" her friend asked. Aisha opened her bag and pulled out a folder with the printouts. Zora read them in silence for several minutes. "Aisha, this is serious. What does it mean? You gave him full access. Your husband can make legal, financial, and medical decisions on your behalf. If he claims you are not mentally fit to manage your assets, he can act for you, even sell your house." Aisha felt sick. "And he can do it without me here?" "Yes. And if he's already planned it, this trip you're taking is the perfect window. He won't waste time. He'll move everything while you're out of state." Zora's words seemed to echo around the office, bouncing off the framed degrees and the shelves of thick legal books. Aisha felt her throat close. "He can sell my house?" she whispered. "Without me?" Zora nodded grimly. "If a doctor signs off that you're temporarily incapacitated, or if he uses vague phrasing about mental unfitness, yes," she said. "This clause is broad. Too broad. I hate these forms. They give people way more power than they understand." Aisha gripped the arms of the chair. "So I just handed him the knife," she murmured, "and then told him exactly when I'd be out of the way." Zora leaned forward, eyes steady. "Listen to me," she said. "You made a mistake. You were recovering from surgery and trusted your husband. That's not a crime. It's what any normal person would do." "Apparently, I'm not married to a normal person," Aisha said bitterly. Zora exhaled. "No," she agreed. "You're married to someone who's acting like a predator, but predators make mistakes when they get cocky." She tapped the folder. "And this," she added, "this can be reversed." Aisha blinked. "Reversed?" she echoed. "Yes," Zora said. "A power of attorney is something you grant, and you can revoke it. You just have to do it properly, then notify the right people. The question is how we do it without tipping him off before you're ready." A strange feeling stirred in Aisha's chest. Not hope, exactly. Something colder, more focused. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Zora's mouth curved into a small, fierce smile. "First," she said, "we draft a revocation of power of attorney. You sign it, we notarize it tonight. Then tomorrow you send copies by registered mail and email to every institution that matters. Your banks, your investment firm, your HR department, your doctor's office. Anywhere he might try to use this document." "And while I'm on the plane to Nashville," Aisha asked quietly, "he'll show up with his lover and his fancy papers?" Zora shook her head. "No," she said. "He'll show up with a piece of paper that used to mean something, and he'll find out that it doesn't anymore." Aisha stared at her. "You want me to still go," she realized. Zora nodded slowly. "You're supposed to be out of town," she said. "He's counting on that. Let him keep thinking it. Meanwhile, you will not be where he thinks you are." Aisha's mind flashed with images. Malik walking into the bank in his pressed shirt, the mystery woman on his arm, smug, sure that she won. Her accounts disappearing with a few signatures. Then, another image. Malik walking into the bank and finding Aisha already sitting there, flanked by a banker and a lawyer who had been warned hours earlier. Her pulse quickened. "Walk me through it," she said, "step by step." They worked for 2 hours. Zora drafted the revocation document, reading every line out loud. Aisha signed, the notary stamped, and copies were made and placed carefully into labeled envelopes. They made a list of Aisha's accounts. the joint checking that Malik had access to, the savings in her name only, the investment portfolio, her retirement plan, the emergency fund she kept at a smaller local bank. "You need to move as much as you legally can out of shared reach," Zora said. "Tomorrow, before he gets suspicious, transfer the majority of the joint balance into an account in your name only. Do it online if you can. As long as you leave enough for the mortgage and utilities, he can't immediately cry foul." "And the power of attorney?" Aisha asked. "We send it everywhere it matters," Zora replied. "I'll email copies from my office CCing you. You'll physically deliver one to your main bank branch tomorrow and ask to speak to a manager. Tell them that under no circumstances should anyone be allowed to act for you, even your husband, without a direct phone confirmation with a code word we'll set up." "A code word?" Aisha repeated. Zora nodded. "If he tries something while you're in Nashville, they call you," she said. "But really, you'll be right here, with me, or at the bank, or wherever we need you." Aisha swallowed. "And when he finds out?" she asked. "When he realizes I cut the strings?" Zora's gaze hardened. "Then we'll see how he reacts when the puppets don't dance," she said. "But first, we protect your money. Then we figure out what to do about your marriage." That night, Aisha lay awake beside Malik, watching the shadows shift on the ceiling. He slept soundly, one arm sprawled over her side of the bed, breathing deep, like a man who believed the world was firmly under his control. She looked at his profile in the darkness. She remembered the years when that face meant comfort, partnership. When he'd show up at her office with takeout on late nights, when they'd talk for hours about their future, when Amari was just a wish and not a sleeping child down the hall. Somewhere along the way, something had rotted. It wasn't sudden, it never was. Little secrets, little lies. Calls taken on the patio, new passwords. "You're overreacting, babe." "Don't you trust me?" She had trusted him, enough to sign away her power while she was still bruised from surgery. Now her 7-year-old had pulled the fire alarm her adult brain refused to see. "Thank you," she thought, picturing Amari's sleepy eyes, his head on her chest. "I won't fail you again." Monday was a blur of controlled panic. At the clinic where she sometimes met clients, Aisha took her lunch break in the small conference room and, under Zora's guidance on speakerphone, moved funds. She logged into the joint account and transferred most of the balance into her personal savings, leaving just enough to cover auto-pay bills so Malik wouldn't immediately notice. She called her investment firm, requested that all permissions be changed to client only, and added the revocation document to their records. At her primary bank branch, she asked to speak to the manager. The woman, a composed professional named Ms. Nguyen, listened carefully as Aisha explained, in general terms, that she had revoked a broad power of attorney and was concerned about possible unauthorized attempts to move funds while she traveled. "I understand," Ms. Nguyen said. "We can add a special instruction to your profile. No large transfers or account changes without a direct phone call to you, using this verification code." She slid a form across the desk. "Pick a word," she said. "Something no one else would guess." Aisha thought for a second. "Amari," she said. Then she shook her head. "No," she corrected. "Too obvious." She hesitated. "Use lantern," she said finally. "My grandmother used to say, 'One small lantern is enough to expose a whole nest of rats.'" Miss Nguyen's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she smiled. "Lantern it is," she said, typing. They also agreed on something else. If anyone came in with a power of attorney, even a notarized one, claiming to represent Aisha, the bank would politely ask them to wait, while Ms. Nguyen made a discreet call. Aisha walked out of the bank with her heart racing and a fragile sense of control blooming in her chest, step by step. That evening, Amari sat at the kitchen table, drawing a dragon with mismatched wings. "Baby," Aisha said softly, sitting down across from him, "about what you told me the other night. You were very brave to tell me. I want you to know you did the right thing." Amari's pencil paused. He looked up at her cautiously. "Did Daddy do something bad?" he asked. Aisha swallowed. She wanted to shield him from all of it, to say it was a misunderstanding, that adults would figure it out, but he was already in the middle of the story whether she liked it or not. "Daddy did something wrong," she said carefully. "He talked to someone about money that belongs to all of us, and he did it behind my back. That's not okay." "Are you mad at him?" Amari whispered. "Yes," she said honestly. "I'm very angry, and I'm also grateful that you told me. You helped me protect us." He nodded slowly. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "No," she said quickly, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "You will never be in trouble for telling me the truth. Do you understand? Never." His shoulders relaxed a little. "Good," he murmured, "because I didn't like it. The way he talked on the phone. It sounded like when kids whisper bad plans at school." She almost smiled. "That's exactly what it was," she said. "A bad plan, and now we're making a good one." Tuesday morning, the house woke up at 4 a.m. Aisha, dressed in her navy travel suit, rolled her suitcase to the door and double-checked her laptop bag. Her boarding pass, real, not fake, was on her phone. She was flying to Nashville. She was just not staying as long as Malik thought. Malik was unusually attentive. He loaded her suitcase into the trunk, kissed her cheek, squeezed her shoulders. "You sure you don't want me to drive you?" he asked. "I'll take an Uber," she said. "No need to drag Amari out of bed." He nodded. "Text me when you land," he said. "I'll bring Amari to school. We'll be fine. Don't worry about a thing." That last sentence might have made her smile once. Now it felt like a taunt. She hugged Amari tight in the dim hallway. "I love you, Peanut," she whispered into his hair. "I'll see you very soon, okay?" "You promise?" he mumbled, half asleep. "I promise," she said, and this time she had no intention of breaking it. Outside, as the Uber pulled away, Aisha looked back at the silhouette of her house in the pre-dawn blue. For a moment, fear clawed at her. Then she remembered the bank manager's calm, Zora's steady voice, her own signature on the revocation. She forced herself to breathe. At Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, she cleared security and boarded her flight like everyone else, laptop under her arm, headphones around her neck. She attended the morning session in Nashville, delivered her presentation, shook hands, smiled, took notes. At noon, while her colleagues went to lunch, she slipped into a quiet corner of the terminal and checked her phone. Text from Malik. "You land okay?" She typed. "Yes, just finished first meeting. It's going well." He replied. "Proud of you. See you Friday." She stared at the heart emoji for a long second. Then she opened another app and checked the time of her return flight. 4:05 p.m. that afternoon. She had booked it yesterday one way using her personal card. By 7 p.m. Atlanta time, she'd be back in the city, and Malik would still believe he had until Friday. Wednesday morning, Aisha sat in Zora's car in the parking lot of her main bank branch. Her suitcase was in the trunk. Her Nashville blazer hung neatly on a hook, but she'd swapped her heels for sensible flats. "You ready?" Zora asked. Aisha exhaled slowly. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm here." Ms. Nguyen had called at 8:13 a.m. "Aisha," she'd said calmly, "your husband just arrived with a woman and presented a power of attorney. I told him I needed to verify something and asked him to wait in my office." "She's there?" Zora had mouthed, eyebrows raised. Aisha's stomach had dropped. "Thank you," she'd told Nguyen. "We're 5 minutes away." Now, as they walked through the glass doors, Aisha could feel her pulse in her throat. The receptionist recognized her and led them straight to Ms. Nguyen's office. When they stepped inside, Malik was pacing near the window, tension radiating off him. Seated in a chair by the desk was a woman Aisha had never seen before. She was in her early 30s with flawless makeup, long braids, and a tight cream dress paired with a blazer that tried but failed to look professional. Her purse rested on her lap, fingers tapping impatiently on the leather. Both of them froze when Aisha and Zora walked in. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Malik's face contorted. "Aisha," he blurted, "what are you— I thought you were in—" "Nashville," she finished quietly. "I was. Now I'm here." The other woman's eyes darted between them, calculation flickering across her features. Ms. Nguyen closed the door behind them, her expression neutral. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "Let's sit." They took their seats, the lovers on one side of the desk, Aisha and Zora on the other. The air crackled. Ms. Nguyen pulled up a file on her screen. "Mr. Bellwether, Ms. Bellwether," she began formally, "you presented a general power of attorney this morning and requested immediate access to several of Ms. Bellwether's accounts, including closing her personal savings and transferring funds." Malik swallowed. "That's right," he said. "My wife is traveling. She asked me to handle this while she's away. We're reorganizing our finances." The woman next to him crossed her legs and smiled faintly. Aisha felt a surge of nausea. Zora tapped her pen once on the desk. "Is that so?" she asked mildly. "Did she also ask you to introduce your assistant to the bank manager?" Malik shot her a glare. "This is none of your business," he snapped. "This is between me and my wife." "You're right," Zora said. "It is. That's why she's here." Aisha finally spoke. "Malik," she said quietly, "Amari heard your little phone call in the den, the one where you told this woman you'd finally be able to breathe easy once you cleaned out my accounts while I was on a business trip." A flicker of panic crossed his face. "Aisha, you're twisting," he began. Ms. Nguyen cleared her throat. "Before we go further," she said, "I need to clarify something important. Ms. Bellwether, did you or did you not revoke the power of attorney previously granted to your husband?" Aisha held her gaze. "I did," she said. "Formally, in writing, notarized, and I delivered that revocation to this branch yesterday." Ms. Nguyen nodded. "That's correct," she confirmed, turning the monitor slightly so Malik could see. "We received a revocation of power of attorney, filed under your profile. According to our policy, from that point onward, no one can act on your behalf using the old document." She folded her hands. "Legally speaking, Mr. Bellwether," she said, "the paper you handed me this morning is void. It no longer grants you any authority." The other woman's smile vanished. "Void?" Malik repeated. "She can't just— We're married." Zora leaned forward. "A power of attorney is not a marriage license," she said coolly. "It's a permission slip, one that the person who granted it can take back at any time, especially if she discovers that the person she trusted is planning to abuse it." Malik's gaze snapped to Aisha. "You went behind my back," he hissed. "You think you're so smart. You always think you're 10 steps ahead." She felt a wave of sadness wash over her. "I trusted you with everything," she said. "I signed those papers lying on the couch, stitches still fresh, because you said you wanted to protect me. Then you planned to empty my accounts the minute I left town, with your girlfriend at your side." The other woman straightened. "Okay, first of all," she began, "you don't know me. Don't call me." Zora turned her head slowly. "And you are?" she asked. The woman hesitated. "Nia," she said stiffly. "I work with Malik." "In what capacity?" Zora pressed. Nia's chin jutted out. "Personal," she said, "and future business partner." Zora's lip curled almost imperceptibly. "Noted," she said. Malik slammed his palm on the desk. "Enough," he snapped. "Aisha, you're making a scene. We can talk about this at home. You don't need to involve lawyers and bankers." "Oh, I absolutely do," Aisha cut in. "Because you weren't planning to talk about this at home, Malik. You were planning to leave me with nothing while I was in another state, then gaslight me into believing it was all some misunderstanding." His mouth opened, then closed. "You don't know what I was planning," he muttered. "Yes?" she said quietly. "I do." She glanced at Ms. Nguyen. "I think we're done here," she said. "You have my revocation on file. As of this moment, no transactions can be made on my accounts without my direct, in-person authorization." "Correct." Guyan confirmed. Mr. Bellwether, I'm afraid you no longer have any signing authority. Nia shot to her feet. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You told me— Nia, Malik hissed. Not now. Oh, now you want to tell me what to do? She threw back. You said she'd be gone. You said she was too busy being a boss to notice if a few numbers changed. You said— She stopped abruptly as she realized every eye in the room was on her. Aisha felt a strange calm settle over her. I wish I could say I'm surprised, she said. I'm not. She stood, smoothing her blazer. We're not finished, Malik said quickly, also rising. This doesn't have to be the end of us, Aisha. We can— She looked at him. Really looked at him. Not the man she'd fallen in love with at 26, not the father who'd cried when Amari was born, but the man in front of her now, the one who had whispered with another woman about breathing easy once her money was gone. You're right, she said softly. This doesn't have to be the end of everything. Hope flickered in his eyes. It's the end of our marriage, she said. But it's the beginning of me finally believing what people show me instead of what they promise me. He flinched. Aisha, don't do this, he pleaded. Think about Amari. You're really going to blow up his whole life over some misunderstanding. She laughed once, sharply. Don't you dare bring our son into this, she said. He's the one who warned me. He heard you. He was more honest with me than his own father was. Nia picked up her purse, muttering under her breath. I didn't sign up for this drama, she said. You told me she'd roll over. She walked toward the door. Malik went pale. Nia, wait, he said, darting after her. We can still— The door shut behind her. He turned back, breathing hard. Aisha, he said, lower now. Baby, you know me. You know I love you. I got carried away, okay? I thought we could rearrange things. I would have told you eventually. Zora let out a disbelieving sound. Aisha picked up her bag. I'll be contacting a family lawyer this week, she said. We can discuss custody, the house, and whatever else is left together, through them. She glanced at Miss Nguyen. Thank you, she said, for honoring my instructions. Of course, Nguyen replied. That's what we're here for. Aisha walked to the door. Malik didn't block her way. He just stood there, watching her, like a man who just realized the ground under him wasn't as solid as he thought. At the threshold, she paused. You almost pulled it off, she said quietly. If Amari had slept deeper that night, if I'd thrown those papers into a drawer and never read them, you would have walked out of this building today with my life in your pocket. She met his eyes. You didn't just try to take my money, Malik, she said. You tried to take my safety, my stability, our son's future. She shook her head. I may have signed that power of attorney once, she finished, but I will never again sign away my judgment. Then she stepped out. The months that followed were not easy. Divorce never is, even when you know it's the only sane path. Malik alternated between anger and guilt, between offering deals and threatening court. But Zora referred Aisha to a sharp family lawyer who had seen men like him 100 times. They negotiated joint legal custody of Amari, with primary physical custody going to Aisha. The house, purchased mostly with her income and premarital savings, remained in her name. Malik moved into a small apartment across town, suddenly very familiar with the realities of bills, without her salary cushioning every fall. He never got near her accounts again. Some nights, after Amari fell asleep at her place, Aisha would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how many warning signs she'd glossed over, wondering how long this other woman had been in their story, wondering if Malik had ever really seen her as anything other than a convenient safety net. But those nights became fewer. More often, she fell asleep exhausted but lighter. She set up a trust in Amari's name, funded with a portion of her savings and future bonuses. She updated her will. She designated Zora and her sister as her emergency contacts, not a future partner. She sat with Amari on the couch one evening and said, "No matter what happens between Daddy and me, You will always be cared for. That's my job." He nodded solemnly. "Is Daddy mad at me?" he asked. "Because I told you?" A new ache pierced her. "No," she said firmly. "And if he ever says he is, he'll have to answer to me. You told me the truth. You helped me. You were braver than a lot of adults would be." He rested his head on her shoulder. "I didn't want them to take your money," he said, "because then we couldn't buy the special cereal." She laughed through the sudden tears. "We will always have cereal," she promised, "even if I have to buy the cheap kind for a while." "Even the cheap kind is good," he said thoughtfully, "if you put bananas." Months later, when the dust of the divorce settled and the house finally felt like hers again, not theirs, not his and hers, just hers and Amari's, Aisha stood in the kitchen making coffee at 3 a.m., the same hour she'd once paced like a trapped animal. This time, the silence didn't feel like a prison. It felt like space. Space she'd carved out with the help of a frightened child's whisper, a friend's sharp legal mind, and her own decision to stop doubting what she saw. Her son had woken her up with a sentence that split her life in two. "Mama, Daddy has a girlfriend. When you go on your trip, he's going to take all your money." It had sounded for a heartbeat like a nightmare. In the end, it had been a lifeline. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that saves you. And sometimes, the power you thought you gave away with a signature, you can take it back with another. Years later, the true ending of this story turned out to be nowhere Aisha expected. Not in court, not at the bank, not even on the day the judge officially signed the divorce. It came on a very ordinary morning. Aisha was already in her 40s. Amari was taller than her shoulder now, his voice cracking, his sneakers competing in price with her heels. They were getting ready for school. She was hurriedly pouring coffee into her travel mug while he rummaged in the closet looking for a hoodie. "Mom?" he said suddenly, without turning around. "You know, back then, I wasn't just talking about the money." She froze. "About what, baby?" she asked, though she already knew. He turned to her. No longer the little boy with wet eyes, but almost a grown teenager, though his gaze was still just as direct. "I was scared that if he took everything, you'd be left with nothing and you'd leave," he said quietly. "Somewhere far away, without me. I didn't want to lose you." Words spoken so many years later suddenly lit up that night in a new way. It hadn't just been about money. It had been about fear, about a child who, with his whole small heart, was trying to keep his world from falling apart. Aisha walked over, put her hands on his shoulders, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "There is not a single adult on this planet who can take me away from you. Not a husband, not a mistress, not a lawyer, not a banker. You are my family. You are my home. Everyone else is just a guest." The corners of his mouth twitched. "Even if the guest has a really expensive watch and a brand new car," he tried to joke. She smiled. "Even if the guest has a watch and a car and their own island," she replied. "Money can buy furniture in a house, but not the people who live in it." He hugged her so tightly it wasn't a child's hug anymore. It was the hug of someone who already knows life can be cruel and still chooses to trust. "So I did the right thing, yeah?" he asked quietly. "Back then, when I told you." She pulled his head to her shoulder. "You saved me," she said. "And yourself, too. That wasn't snitching. That was pulling the fire alarm, the most honest, the bravest thing you could have done." He stepped back, snorted, and shrugged, embarrassed. "Okay, just don't tell everyone that," he muttered. "Especially Grandma. She's already way too proud of me." "There's no such thing as too proud," Aisha smirked. "But fine, it'll stay our secret. One more." When the door closed behind him and the house sank back into morning quiet, Aisha walked over to the window. Outside, it was the same street, the same trees, the same light. But inside, everything was different. She remembered how she had once signed a paper that handed almost all the power over her life to another person, and how, later, with a shaking hand, she signed another one that took that power back. As a child, her grandmother often said, "Sometimes God whispers through adults, but when adults don't listen, he starts speaking through children." Back then, it sounded like a pretty metaphor. Now, it felt like the exact formula of her salvation. That evening, getting ready for bed, Aisha opened her laptop and added one more line to the draft she kept for her channel. The same document that had once become the beginning of this story. Sometimes the most important financial advice you'll ever get in your life doesn't come from a consultant or a banker, but from the barely audible whisper of a 7-year-old in the dark. She closed the document, turned off the light, and for the first time in many years, fell asleep without wandering the kitchen at 3 a.m., searching for a way out, because she had already found the main exit. Not at the bank, not in court, but in a simple, unshakable decision, never again to sign anything that makes her weaker, and always to listen to the quiet voice beside her, even if it comes from a small person in pajamas. That's how one short sentence from a child, "Mama, Daddy has a girlfriend and they want to take all your money," became the beginning of the end of her marriage, and the beginning of her real, mature, truly free life.